show you a series of pictures. Here's the first one. Would you tell a brief but imaginative story suggested by this picture and by the following questions? What is happening? Who is the man? What has happened in the past? What led up to this situation? What is being wanted and by whom? What will happen? That is...
Do the answers to questions like these have anything to do with the fate of nations? In a moment you will hear from a man who is interested in human motivation, a psychologist exploring man's need for achievement. I'm John Darley. The psychologist you heard a moment ago asking a series of questions about this picture was Dr. David McClelland of Harvard University. Dr. McClelland's special field is motivation. He's currently concerned with what makes civilizations rise and fall, a question that used to be the province of the historian, men like Gibbon, Spengler, and Toynbee. But as you will see, Dr. McClelland goes about answering this question in a very different way.
All right, you can go ahead now.
I think this man is an engineer. It's Saturday, and he's getting a little bit tired of work, and he's taking some time off to daydream. He's thinking of last weekend, the trip he took out the country where they visited a lake. Him and his family. That's his family there on the picture you see on his desk. You see his two kids and his wife. He likes his family quite a bit, and they often have a very good time together. Since today is Saturday, he's thinking that tomorrow is Sunday, and that maybe they could repeat the trip that they did last weekend. So he's thinking that tomorrow he'll have a great time again with his kids and his wife, and he's sure that...
This man is responding to one item in a projective test. But before we discuss his response, let me take a moment to tell you what all this is about. For a number of years now, I have been trying to develop a psychological theory as to why nations flourish and decay. This is not just a rational theory, but rather it is attempting to be a scientific theory. That is, it makes a hypothesis which can be tested and verified by experimental methods. Beyond this, it enables us to account for events in the past, and hopefully it may enable us to predict future events. My hypothesis is that the economic growth and decline of nations is to a very considerable extent dependent on a particular motive in the people of that nation. The motive involved is the need to achieve. In order to understand a society, you must first understand the people that make it up. The projective test, of which you have just seen a sample, is one method of assessing a man's achievement motivation. Now let us listen to another man in response to the same picture.
The man looks like an engineer. He's sitting at his desk, working. He has a problem, and he's concentrating on it. How can he design the struts of the bridge to be light enough and still withstand the strains of high winds? He wants to come to a good solution by himself if he can. I think he'll consult other engineers on the problem. But he'll make the decision, the final decision himself.
Now here we have transcriptions of the two responses that you have already heard to the same picture. We have developed an objective scoring system for counting the number of achievement themes that occur in stories like these. The story told by the first man doesn't deal with achievement at all. Its emphasis is on family activities and family affection throughout. His score is a -1. The story told by the second man is different. It emphasizes achievement constantly. In fact, his score is a +4. This is only one of a whole series of pictures used in this projective test.
何か話しているようですけど、私には何か分かりませんでしたけど、最中のようです。
In a projective test, a man is responding to a limited suggestion by projecting his own fantasies. What we are interested in is the amount of achievement motivation in these fantasies.
En el campo. Los sujetos son un padre y un hijo. El hijo, un adolescente de cerca de 18 años, parece estar recibiendo consejos de su padre acerca del futuro de su vida. Parece estar en la edad en que debe decidir el camino, el curso.
The man is a top official, not government, he's a businessman.
Una tarde, estando en el campo, su tío Pedro.
Over 10,000 men have taken this test in some 18 different countries over the past 15 years. And we have developed an objective system for coding their responses. Essentially, it is a count of the frequency with which they refer to achievement as compared, say, to power or family affection. In fact, the scoring system is so objective that we have developed a program for the high-speed computer that does the job for us. Men who score high on this test are men who are dynamic entrepreneurs, successful businessmen. Interestingly enough, men who are successful as managers and executives in government bureaus also score just as high as their counterparts in private business. In this projective test, we use a picture to get the subject's response, but of course that is not the only way in which we can get a measure of achievement motivation. This business game, for example, was especially designed for this purpose.
You will again have to make a decision on how many sets of parts you want to purchase for assembly in a 5-minute period. Consider this information and choose the option which you think would give you the greatest profit.
In this particular situation, the players are to construct rocket planes. Each player has to estimate how many planes he will build during the time allotted.
What is your decision?
I'll take 5. I think that sounds pretty reasonable.
I'll take 6. I think I can make 10. I'll try 10.
This man tends to make a high estimate of what he can do. He typifies the man with high achievement motivation, self-confident, but rather tense and keyed up.
You'll have 5 minutes to put these together. Ready?
Wait a minute. What happens if I break one of these?
That's perfectly all right. Just draw another replacement part from the bin. Ready? Begin.
When a man with high achievement motivation wants advice, he generally seeks it from an expert. But men with less need for achievement more often base their working relationships on friendship. what we psychologists call need for affiliation rather than need for achievement. What effect does a financial incentive have on this man with a low need for achievement?
This time, we'll be producing nuclear tractors. I will give $50 to whoever makes the most units within the next 5-minute period.
$50.
$50.
He raises his estimate sharply and works harder.
This time I'll go for 9.
9.
5 minutes.
But how about the man with high achievement motivation?
I was just about 1 over on my estimate last time. This time I'll drop down to 9.
Okay, you can collect your parts now from the bins.
Originally, he made a high estimate of the number of units he would complete, but he failed to make them all. So he is realistic and uses his earlier experience to make a more accurate estimate this time. The man with low achievement motivation is often spurred on by the idea of financial reward. But the man with high achievement motivation, contrary to what is generally assumed, is not primarily motivated by the lure of money. He works just as hard as he always works. Even in a country like Russia, old economy, active managers and executives score high on our test of achievement motivation. The point seems to be that with this type of man, it doesn't really matter whether his reward comes in the form of money, of an increase in the sales graph, or meeting a quota, just so long as he gets some immediate and concrete feedback as to how well he's doing. Now let's see for a moment where we are. We started out with the question, what makes a nation rise and fall? I have here a diagram which outlines our hypothesis as to the chain of events through which achievement motivation operates to increase a nation's rate of economic growth. Societies influenced only through the activities of individual men. We talked about the role of successful businessmen. Now let's carry the chain of events one step further back. Can we detect achievement motivation in young men, in students? Can we predict their future activities? Tests of the strength of achievement motivation were given to members of a college class. Projective tests as well as others. Ready? Go!
Okay, Jim, now watch it. Come on. Oh, boy. Give it a gun on the straightaways, but watch the curve very carefully.
In this case, toy cars are used to test achievement motivation. This is a racing game.
You can afford to take it a little faster.
These two young men are the drivers. Which do you think has the higher need to achieve? The driver on the left is eager, and he drives fast. His car is ahead, but he's going too fast. His car crashes off the curve, and he loses his lead. The risks he takes are too great.
Oh, come on, Al, hurry up.
Hey, Jim, give it a gun now on the straightaways.
This young man behaves quite differently. He wants to win, and so he drives fairly fast, even fast enough to take a chance, but not a chance that will certainly make him lose. He is what we call a moderate risk taker. He is the one with high achievement motivation. Boys as well as men who are strongly motivated to achieve are consistently moderate risk takers. They are willing, even eager to risk in order to achieve something, but they don't like to take so much of a risk that they are likely to fail. This is a very different situation, a game of chance, not influenced by skill or ability.
Looks like a big 14.
Those are mine.
That's an enormous bet you've got there.
Just white chips.
Place your bets. Big gambler. Jim, aren't you going to play?
Well, okay.
Okay, here we go again. All bets placed. Around she goes.
The young man with high achievement motivation does not like to take a risk when he has no control over the outcome. He is not a gambler in the true sense. The members of the college class who had been tested for achievement motivation were not lost sight of. A careful check was made on their activity some 15 years later. Funnily enough, practically all of the men who currently held executive, managerial positions were men who, as students, some 15 years earlier had scored very high on our test of achievement motivation. On the other hand, almost none of these men in active, innovative positions had scored low on the test. In other words, our test of achievement motivation was good enough to enable us to predict a person's behavior some 15 years later. This capacity to predict is very important for any science. Now, how early does this difference in achievement motivation that occurs between individuals show itself? Let's turn for a moment from a consideration of college students to a consideration of children.
Today, we're going to play a ring toss game. Each of you will have a chance with 3 rings to make 3 shots. We want to see how many rings you can get over the peg. Roger?
Where do we stand?
Anywhere you wish, anywhere you like to make your toss. Peter, will you be the man to catch them down there?
Each child is free to stand wherever he wishes when he tosses the rings. It is typical of the child who is highly motivated to achieve to choose a middle distance. Enough of a challenge to give him a sense of achievement when he succeeds, but not so great a risk that he is likely to do badly. One of the most observable qualities of children with high achievement motivation is that they are moderate risk takers. A child with low achievement motivation may stand so close that there's no challenge at all. Or he may go so far back that he is unlikely to succeed. We have followed achievement motivation down to childhood. The question naturally arises, what accounts for the origin of achievement motivation? Is it related, for example, to parental behavior and attitudes?
Now, Jack, I'm going to blindfold you. I want you to pile as many blocks as you can, using just your left hand. If you knock over the stack, you lose the game. How's that blindfold?
Fine.
Now, Mr. Kahn, you can talk to Jack while he's doing this, but please don't touch him, and don't touch the blocks.
Okay.
Jack, how many of these blocks do you think you're going to be able to pile?
I'd say about 10 or 11.
Mr. Kahn, how many blocks do you think Jack will be able to pile?
Oh, maybe 14 or 15.
Fine. Well, Jack, do you want to start now?
This high estimate of what his son will do is typical of the parent of a boy who is highly motivated to achieve.
That looks like a pretty good start.
Mm.
Oh, boy. Hey, pal, you're picking out very pretty colors, too. Good fella. It's very good.
What colors are they?
Oh, it looks like sort of a modern red and yellow battleship. That's what you're secretly trying to build?
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Notice that the father is encouraging, but that the son retains the initiative for action. In general, parents of boys with high achievement motivation favor early self-reliance in their sons. Here is another father and son pair responding to the same situation.
Jim, I think you better start with 5.
No, I can do 8.
He'll start with 5. Let him start with 5.
Well, why don't you start now? Let's see how many you can pile up.
Push the blocks away before you begin. Go ahead, push them all over the side. Start with the flat ones now.
The parents of boys with low need to achieve often make low estimates of what their sons will achieve, and even deprecate their ability.
Work right along now. Yeah, that's a good one. That's all right. Now, pile them up evenly. Now, do it square so they'll hold. Otherwise, they're going to fall over.
Fine. Come on, keep moving. Jim, that one isn't going to work now. Get the flat ones. That's right. Right there. You just had one. All right. No.
In many cases, they tend to take over, to dominate the son's activity.
Put that one back. That's right.
In science, there is no ultimate answer to any question, but only a successive movement from one explanation to another explanation beyond that, and so on. We have seen how parents play a part in developing achievement motivation in their children. But then one might ask, what produces the parents? We must then move on to the culture in which the parents live. We have found that we can detect the extent to which a culture stresses achievement by counting the number of achievement themes in popular literature produced in that country. Time and time again, we have found that a stress on achievement in the literature of a country tended to precede a rapid upsurge of economic growth in the country that produced the literature. Well, now we are back around the circle to the question with which we started. Why do nations rise and fall? We believe that we have evidence that the need to achieve plays a vital role. We are just beginning to understand the importance of this motive in human life. But already we can give a pretty fair description of a man with a strong need to achieve. He holds an executive or innovative position. He is an active and self-confident man, a moderate risk taker, very likely from the middle class, who values money not so much for its own sake, but as a symbol of achievement. We even know how such a man doodles. For example, if you look at the doodle of this man with high need for achievement, you will notice that the strong diagonals and the discrete S shapes. Whereas if you compare the doodle of a man with low need for achievement, notice that he repeats the doodles over and over again and uses up the same space as if he were scribbling. Not all people who contribute to society score high in achievement motivation as we use this expression. This group encompasses only what I would call the entrepreneurial type. There are lots of people with low need for achievement whose accomplishments are very great. For example, Nobel Prize-winning scientists do not score unusually high on our test of achievement motivation. Generally speaking, professionals and academics like myself do not score very high either. Perhaps this is related to the fact that we do not get or require the kind of immediate feedback that the enterprising businessman seems to require. Well, a strong need to achieve does not make a man better or worse than any other man. Nevertheless, it does seem to be very instrumental in producing those surges of economic activity that are so important in the lives of people and of nations.
We often speak as though different disciplines, political science, sociology, history, were really separate entities. But what you have just heard is a psychological theory that seeks to explain man's economic behavior. Consider what this might possibly mean. Think, for example, of some of the underdeveloped nations of the world. Which of them will become dominant and mighty nations in the 21st century? Perhaps if we can assess their achievement motivation, we can predict. And perhaps if we can increase their need to achieve, we can modify history.